America has now created a completely new set of rules for stablecoins. And right now, the biggest stablecoin in the entire crypto market is USDT, and it does not appear to fit neatly inside those rules in its current form. Now, before anybody panics, this does not mean USDT has been banned. It does not mean that Tether is collapsing, and it certainly does not mean that everybody in the UK needs to rush out into an exchange and swap their USDT today. But here is the real story, and it could eventually change the way that USDT is used on exchanges, inside trading bots, and across the wider crypto market. So in this video, I'm going to take all the complicated legal language, strip it right back, and explain it in normal English. And why has Tether created a completely separate stablecoin for America? And most importantly, should ordinary USDT holders actually be worried? Let's start with the basics. For anybody who's completely new to crypto, USDT is what's called a stablecoin. A stablecoin is basically a crypto token designed to stay in the same value as a normal currency. In USDT's case, one USDT is supposed to remain worth roughly $1. That makes it useful because people can move into something that behaves like dollars without necessarily withdrawing all their money way back into the bank. People use USDT for trading. They use it to move money between exchanges, pretty much like I do, which is to take temporary profits and leave them on the sidelines. And it is also used by a massive number of automated trading systems. You can almost think of USDT as the digital dollar sitting underneath a huge part of the crypto market. Now, America has looked at this enormous stablecoin industry and effectively said, if companies are going to create digital versions of our dollar, we want proper rules. And this is what the Genius Act is about. The law was approved back in July 2025 and creates a federal framework for payment stablecoins in the United States of America. It says that stablecoin issuers need proper approval, proper supervision, clear rules around giving customers their money back, and at least $1 of identifiable reserves for every dollar token they issue. It also limits the main reserve asset to things like cash, short-dated US government debt, and certain very short-term financial arrangements. In plain English, America wants to know three things. Who is issuing the stablecoin? Where is the money? And can people actually get their dollars back when they ask for them? And that, to me, all sounds very, very sensible. But this is where USDT runs into a problem. USDT is not currently operating as an approved Genius Act stablecoin. That sentence is important, so let me explain exactly what it means. I'm not saying that an American regulator has stood on a stage and officially declared that USDT has failed. I'm saying that USDT has not currently completed the process required to operate as an approved stablecoin under this new American system. Think of it like a building. You may have a perfectly strong building, it may have stood there for years without any problems, but imagine a new set of building regulations that come in and you have not yet received the new certificate. You cannot honestly say that your building has been approved under the new system. That does not mean the building is about to fall down. It simply means the new approval process has not been completed. And Tether's own language appears to confirm this. You see, because when Tether launched its new American stablecoin, USAT, it said ordinarily USDT was still progressing towards Genius Act compliance. In other words, even Tether is not saying that the process is already finished. So why doesn't USDT simply qualify automatically? The first reason is that Tether is a foreign issuer. The company behind USDT is not a normal American stablecoin company operating entirely inside the United States of America. Now, the Genius Act does allow foreign stablecoin issuers to operate in America, but they have some extra hoops that they need to jump through. The home country rule needs to be considered comparable to the American system, and they need suitable reserve and liquidity arrangements, and they must be capable of following lawful American orders. Now, that bit is really important. So USDT is not automatically disqualified simply because Tether is based outside of America, but Tether cannot just say, we are massive, everybody uses us, so the new rules don't apply. This still needs to fit through the correct regulatory doorway. The second issue is what Tether actually holds behind the USDT. Now, I've made videos on this in the past, and this is where people can easily become confused, so let me make it really simple. There are two completely separate questions. Question one is, does Tether report that it owns enough assets? And question number two, are all those assets the exact type allowed under the Genius Act? Those are not the same question, because Tether's latest published figures at the end of March 2026 showed approximately $191.8 billion in total assets against around $183.5 billion in liabilities. Now, according to Tether's report, its assets were therefore higher than its liabilities by approximately $8.2 billion. That is important because I do not want anybody watching this video to hear me say that USDT has no backing. That is not what Tether's reports are saying. The question is about the type of backing, because the Genius Act wants the required one-to-one reserve to be made up of fairly narrow list of high liquidity assets. Tether holds enormous amounts of US Treasury exposure, which is exactly the sort of asset the law appears to favour. But Tether's reserve report also includes assets such as gold, Bitcoin and secured loans. At the end of March 2026, Tether reported approximately $20 billion in physical gold and around $7 billion in Bitcoin. Here is the easiest way I can explain the potential problem. Imagine a new rule says your emergency fund must be held entirely in cash or in instant access savings account. You show the regulator that you're worth plenty of money, but some of your money is in gold, some is in Bitcoin, and some has been lent out. You may still have more assets than debts. You may still be very wealthy, but you may not have necessarily met that exact rule governing what can be counted as an emergency fund. That is broadly the question hanging over USDT today. It's not simply Tether doesn't own assets. It's more like, can Tether clearly show that the full one-to-one reserve required by the American framework is held in assets the American framework specifically allows? And that could require changes. It could require Tether to separate certain assets more clearly. It could require different reporting. It will require regulatory approval, and it could require a combination of all those things at the same time. This brings us to what I think is the biggest clue about this entire story. Tether has now launched a separate stablecoin for the American market called USAT. This is not just USDT with a shiny new logo. USAT is issued by the Anchorage Digital Bank and has been purposely built to operate within the America's new federal stablecoin framework. Tether describes USAT as an American product, while ordinary USDT continues operating globally and works towards compliance. And that raises a very obvious question. Why would Tether go to all the trouble of creating a completely separate American stablecoin if ordinary USDT could simply continue operating in America exactly as it does today? To me, USAT looks like Tether building a new front door to the American market. USDT remains the enormous global product, but USAT is the product designed specifically around American rules. That does not prove that Tether has given up on making USDT compliant. Tether may still change the way that USDT's reserves are structured. It may complete the foreign issuer registration process. It may eventually have both products operating in America for different types of customers. But USAT gives Tether another route. And that route may become extremely important if American exchanges and financial institutions start demanding stablecoins that are clearly built inside the Genius Act framework. Now, this matters particularly to traders because USDT is not just something people hold inside a wallet. It is the main trading pair used across the enormous section of the crypto market. When you see Bitcoin against USDT or XRP against USDT or Ethereum against USDT, USDT is the digital dollar sitting on the other side of that trade. And it is also used by a huge number of trading bots. While we're talking about trading bots, if you've always wanted to understand how they work but don't know where to begin, we have created a completely free course called Trade Bot Pro. It takes somebody who knows absolutely nothing about trading bots and gets them to the point where they can start trialing them completely for free. And the course, it lasts about 30 minutes. So in under 30 minutes, you can be live trialing these bots. The link is in the description, or you can simply visit www.cryptowolfpack.co.uk. Now back to USDT. The next question is the one everybody really cares about. Is USDT going to be banned? And right now, the answer is no. The wider Genius Act does not fully take effect until early of January 2027, or 120 days after the final regulations are issued. As of July 2026, which is now, American regulators were still working through proposed rules and reporting requirements. There is also a 3-year transition period before American digital asset service providers are generally prevented from offering stablecoins to people in the United States unless the issuer qualifies under the new framework. That takes us to around July 2028. But please do not twist this into USDT is going to be banned worldwide in July 2028. That is not what the law is saying. The concern is that US-facing exchanges and crypto companies could eventually be restricted from offering a stablecoin to American customers if its issuer has not qualified. That could result in fewer USDT trading pairs for American users. It could result in more support for products such as USDT and other approved stablecoins. And it could gradually move some liquidity away from USDT inside the American market. But that is very different from USDT suddenly disappearing across the entire world. So what about us here in the United Kingdom? This is American law. It does not make it illegal for somebody in Britain to hold USDT. It does not tell a UK investor that they must sell it, and it does not automatically force every international exchange to remove it. However, America is still one of the biggest and most influential financial markets in the world. So when America changes its rules, the effects can spread far beyond America. An exchange may decide that it's easier to use the same stablecoin pairs across several different regions. Financial institutions may prefer stablecoins with clear American approval. Liquidity could gradually move towards stablecoins that fit the new framework, or USDT may remain completely dominant across the international markets, while America develops a slightly separate stablecoin system. My honest view is that this is much more likely to be a slow change than a sudden explosion. I do not think people should panic, but I also do not think this story should be dismissed. The truth sits somewhere between the two extremes. People shouting USDT is finished on Twitter, which is what I saw last night, are getting well ahead of themselves. But people saying this means absolutely nothing, which again, I saw that on Twitter. It's also not true, because they may also be underestimating the importance of these new rules could eventually become. The simplest conclusion for me is this, that USDT is not currently operating as an approved Genius Act stablecoin. That does not mean that USDT or Tether is insolvent. It does not mean that it has been banned, and it does not mean UK holders need to make immediate decisions. It means Tether still has work to do if it wants USDT itself to fit fully inside the new American framework. Tether may change USDT in the future. It may use USDT as its main American product, or it may just do a bit of a mixture of both. But whatever happens, stablecoins are moving in a much more regulated period, and that could eventually change the plumbing sitting underneath the entire crypto market. So I want to know what you think. Does this make you less comfortable using or holding USDT? Or do you believe Tether is simply too large and too important for the American crypto market to move away from it? Let me know in the comments, because I think this is going to create a very interesting debate, because on Twitter, people are completely different opinions. And remember, do not allow a frightening headline to make the decision for you. Understand what has actually happened. Understand what has not happened, and then make your own informed decision. For more straight talking crypto conversations, the UK Crypto Podcast is out every single Friday at 7 p.m. on YouTube, TikTok, and Spotify. Our latest episode looks into why XRP creates so much emotion online. There'll also be a link in the description so you can head straight into that playlist. And to learn how trading bots work, take the completely free TradeBot Pro course using the link in the description, or you can go and visit cryptowolfpack.co.uk. And if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and don't forget to press the hype button if you can see it. It really helps the channel with algorithm. I'll see you on the next one. And remember this, the strength of the wolf is in the pack.